even the kitchen porter, who I have since learned is the backbone of any kitchen, they would make sure those plates were gleaming. Their job was to clean plates, but they weren't just cleaning plates. They were excelling at their job. That's about having pride in what you do. It's about having passion in what you do. It doesn't matter if you're cleaning plates or plating the food. They were all going to do it to the best of their abilities.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to episode number 4, series 2 of the Fitzness Academy Podcast. Okay, this is a complete opposite to the word fitness, okay? But on the podcast today, I'm very, very gratefully joined. This is very awkward by my older brother, the basically better version of Gordon Ramsay. That's Mellow. That's being Mellow. I said Mellow, and then I brought it down. Okay, no, but thank you for coming on, Nico. Appreciate it. No worries. So, as everyone's seen, okay, on the podcast so far, okay, I've started with some. Well, not actually, because this is only the second podcast with a guest this season. Okay, a little icebreaker question. Okay, it varies based on an individual. I haven't told you what the question is. Okay, but okay, if you were to only use one kitchen utensil for the rest of your life to cook everything that you needed, okay, what would that be?
Well, it depends, because I always answer my sort of favorite kitchen utensil question with a good chef's knife, because I believe, and I tell all my chefs, that a good chef's knife is all they need to cook amazing food. But obviously there are things that we like to do, slow cooking food, long, slow and low cooking, which requires a nice big casserole pot. And that's kind of what allows you to give flavor to the food. Chuck a beef brisket in a pan, in a casserole, and, just cover it with a bit of stock and leave it for 16 hours, 24 hours, and it's going to turn into this amazing thing. Don't need a knife for that.
Just rip it apart.
So you just rip it apart, it comes apart in your hands. So it would be between one of those two things, either a really, really good pot for my low and slow cooking, or a really nice, sharp Japanese chef's knife.
The thing is, Nico, you can't cook something with a knife. So I reckon if you
can't cook a steak on a knife, no.
But then unless you make the knife really sharp, but then you would have to make the knife really sharp with an oven, but then you can't have an oven because you've already decided.
Exactly.
No.
Catch 22.
Yeah. But of course, obviously I know your story, okay? And anyone who's living under a rock, okay, will not have seen that Nico has recently been on Masterchef The Professionals. Okay, is it 2021? Yeah, sorry, 2022 now. Yeah. And obviously that was insane. It was the most awkward thing in the entire world. Okay, I'm gonna try and lapse the video over the top of here when the first episode came out, and on GBC, whatever, local television, it doesn't get weird anymore because you're bound to be on there eventually or whatever. But being the BBC, okay, it's very rare. I don't think I've ever seen a Gibraltarian there, and not only a Gibraltarian, okay, your older brother. And imagine how weird that was, because, not trying to sound really dirty or anything, okay? But how weird was it watching yourself?
Well, if it was awkward and weird for you, imagine how awkward and weird it was for me, sat there watching myself and knowing what had already happened.
Yeah.
It's quite a surreal experience, and it's not something you can really ever prepare yourself for, because it's so different to anything you've ever done before. And I've done podcasts, and I've done cooking
not the best one though. Not this one though.
Exactly. It's different because you are always aware that you're exposed to millions of people who are watching, and The exposure is great, don't get me wrong, but the nerves are second to none.
Well, we'll get into the intricacies and possibly some little bits and give an inside view into how the show works, possibly a little later on. But obviously, like I said, I know your journey, and I'm very, very proud of your journey. So obviously, we'll start obviously from the earlier years, obviously from when you got into cooking, and then very, very quickly after university, because obviously, as I am aware and all the family are aware, you didn't obviously go to study cooking straight away. So the floor is yours. Off you go.
You'd have to go right back to the very beginning. I think, obviously, I'm the eldest of the three brothers.
Not the tallest, though.
No, definitely the most good-looking and the eldest. And as a baby, as an only child, I remember weekends cooking with our mum. There's a famous photo of me stood on the back of a chair in my underpants.
I'm gonna definitely put that photo on here as well, by the way, just so everyone can see to the world, so everyone can show.
Cooking walnut loaf on the back of a chair. That's sort of my earliest food memory. And then mum used to go to work, and I used to sort of go and stay with our grandparents, and cooking with our grandmother was again just this really amazing food memory in my head, and it was, as cliche as it sounds, it's where it all started, and it's where I always return to when I'm looking for inspiration. So I knew from a very, very young age how important food was to me, and I think I had this general idea in my head that I wanted to be a chef. But you grow up and people tell you, how could you possibly want to be a chef? They work exceptionally long hours. They don't have a social life. The pay is bad. You want something easy. Go be a teacher. Go be an accountant. Go be a lawyer. Jobs which aren't easy. It's not easy being a teacher. It's not easy being an accountant. It's not easy being a lawyer. They're academic jobs. I was looking at a more vocational job, and people were putting me off it because it wasn't academic, because it wasn't something that you could learn in a book. And I listened to them. You're young, you're impressionable, and you listen to these people because they're older and supposedly wiser. I went off to university. All at the same time as I was working in the hospitality industry part-time. I was waiting tables, I was helping with catering events, I was getting involved, and the more and more I got involved in the hospitality industry, the more and more I knew that I wanted to be involved in the hospitality industry. I didn't care that it was long hours because I loved every minute of what I was doing. I didn't care that it was unsociable, and I didn't care that the pay was low because I didn't do it for the money. I didn't do it because I had weekends off. I did it because I couldn't get enough of cooking. And so it became a bit of an obsession. I was training at university to be a linguist. I went off to study modern languages, and I went off to do, French and Spanish and the stuff that I had been told was good for my career. And at the same time, I was telling myself I really just wanted to be a chef. That's what I really want to do. When I graduated, I had spent a year abroad living in Spain, a year abroad living in Switzerland, and the cultures, the food, how important food was to the people of those cultures, it just pushed me over the edge, and I realized it's really what I want to do in my career. I'm going through the motions of being a linguist, and don't get me wrong, to this day, I'm glad I did it because it opened the doors for me to travel, but it's not what I wanted to do, and I was convinced of it. I graduated in 2015, and I went straight for the best culinary school I could find. I wasn't going to do this in half measures, and Le Cordon Bleu in London was the best of the best. It's where all the top chefs go. They had the fourth best chef in the world currently studied at Le
Nico
Cordon Bleu in
Fitzgerald.
London.
That's number one.
Yeah, like Julia Child, who is sort of one of the most famous chefs of the late 1900s in America. She studied at Le Cordon Bleu. all these big names. Mary Berry studied at Le Cordon Bleu. You know, that's kind of the
Little
caliber of
Mary.
chefs that they were putting out, albeit a bit further back, a bit further down the line than when I was studying there. But I realized that it was calling when I went there, and I was all of a sudden, as Matthew once put it, and our middle brother Matthew once put it in a phone call to our mum. He said, you know, it's a building full of 4 floors of people who think exactly like him. He's right at home. There was 4 floors of people who were in love with food. They were in love with cooking. It was their passion, and I had never had that before, so I had never felt at home anywhere. And this is really what cemented it in my brain. And I graduated in mid 2017, and didn't look back.
Well,
It was.
Yeah. So carry on. Floor's still yours.
It was a really humbling experience, I guess. I often, at this point, I'm again lost for words, because I realized back then how my life was about to change. You know, I had been lost until that point, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my career, and I was approaching graduation, and this was at university, and other people already had jobs lined up or knew what they were going to do next, and I was literally standing at my graduation ceremony, Newcastle University, completely unaware of what this degree could do for me. So Le Cordon Bleu was this humbling, life-altering experience. So I became very sure of myself at that point. I knew that I wanted to carry on in food. I wanted to carry on in fine dining. And I had done a 2-week stage, which is a hospitality placement, as it were, an unpaid apprenticeship, with Heston Blumenthaler at Dinner by Heston in the Mandarin Oriental Hotel in London. And wow, what an experience. You know, it was a kitchen that had 40 chefs in it. It was putting out food for 200 people a day at 2 Michelin star level. It's where you want to be. At that point, I was convinced that Heston was the person who I wanted to work for. I applied to his 1 Michelin star restaurant, which was just outside London. It's called the Hind's Head. And it's a modern British gastropub in inverted commas, but really what it does is it puts out the most amazing modern British food. Takes on classics like lamb and peas with mint, or Scotch eggs and pea and ham soup, or, you know, even the simple trifle. But he elevates it to a point where it's perfection. It really is perfection. And for me, that's what food is about. It's about taking something that you love to eat, like a trifle that everybody's grandmother makes, and making it the best trifle that all of those people have had, including their grandmothers. So I got a job there, and it was a mind-blowing experience because of how detail-oriented everybody was, from the person at the top right down to the person washing the plate. You know, even the kitchen porter, who I have since learned is the backbone of any kitchen, they would make sure those plates were gleaming. Their job was to clean plates, but they weren't just cleaning plates. They were excelling at their job. That's about having pride in what you do. It's about having passion in what you do. It doesn't matter if you're cleaning plates or plating the food. They were all going to do it to the best of their abilities. And it was really, again, a turning point in my career where I decided I needed to be as good as all the other people I was working alongside, if not better, because I wanted to achieve this level of perfection. And that's what Heston taught me. That's what the Hind's Head taught me. I had a chance to work at the Fat Duck as well alongside that, because you know, their sauce room was in our kitchen, and their kitchen, their prep house was right next door to our restaurant. So it was a really mind-bending experience. It was all about obsession, perfection, passion. and I'm really grateful for the experience.
That's not where the story ends, though, is it? So obviously, having always, I think, working in a fine dine, or like, sorry, maybe a very high level sort of industry, I think obviously it's very, very important to understand that it's awesome to work at the top level, but how I think we'll finish a story first, and then I'll get onto all the questions that we've got. Not, obviously it's not an interview, but obviously the ones that I've sort of had to think about. Did you sort of then, when you moved on from when you moved on from Heston's restaurants, did you then sort of move on and be like, right, cool, maybe I would like to sort of maybe not take the reins a bit, but have a bit more responsibility than, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful manner, but sort of being the chef that's in the restaurant, and did you maybe want to be a bit more Nico Fitzgerald, the chef of?
Well, I mean, more important to me at that time was to see the other end of the spectrum. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but Heston's restaurants are precision, as I've said, to the minutest detail. Everything was about perfection. Everything was about consistency. The recipes were written down to the milliliter, to the gram, to the 0.1 of a gram. That's not what all restaurants are about. Those are the successful restaurants, the ones that have been successful for 10 years. But I know there's loads of independent restaurants that are about creativity, that are about flair, that are about the individual. I wanted to see those restaurants cooking food that was just as good. Again, it's not derogatory to them to say that they aren't as precise, they aren't as consistency led. It was about restaurants that just wanted to put out good food time after time after time. And, you know, moved to Bristol, and in Bristol was Adelina Yard. It was a tiny restaurant. And I was going from this massive machine down to this restaurant that had 8 tables. It could do a maximum of 30 covers, 30 people for lunch or 30 people for dinner. And they were cooking their hearts out, but there were 4 people in the team. You know, there was the head chef, and that was a role that was shared between a couple, husband and wife. Then there was a sous chef who worked for them, and a chef de partie. And then below that was me, or alongside him, the chef de partie. And we were pumping out jaw-dropping food. As good, if not better than the Heinz.
I can safely say that was the case. Okay, you'll have the evidence base, so that's fine too. So you can trust in me, knowing that is a true statement.
Taste test, yeah. It was amazing. It was an amazing experience. This place didn't have all the bells and whistles that the Fat Duck did. Didn't have all the bells and whistles that the Heinz Head did. It was just a little kitchen. You know, it was maybe 2 meters by 5 meters, and it was literally the size of the pastry section in the Heinz Head. But the whole kitchen used to put out this stunning menu time and time again. So I was starting to pick up a broad spectrum of places, and starting to learn that it wasn't all about the multi-million-pound project. It was about a couple that just really wants to cook good food, and that's the heart and soul of the industry, isn't it? You know, I'm sure the same in your industry. You can have these big behemoths of like Pure Gym and whatever. I don't want to name check anyone in particular, but you know, you've got the little guy as well. You've got the personal trainer who spends, you know, days working on one client. And it's the same in the hospitality industry.
You're spot on.
This little place tucked behind a side alley, and they just want to do really good food for the few people that come to eat there.
Yeah.
They're just as important, if not more important, than the big Fat Duck, Heinz Head, Heston Blumenthal types.
Yeah, I mean, so that point where you made there, obviously a lot of people who watch this, you know, is, you know, apart from the being interested in yourself and what you've done, like I think a lot of people obviously who just through curiosity an example or comparison to that would be, like you just said, comparing it to a bigger chain of gym who is focused on mass production rather than a niche, if you like, because obviously, in my personal opinion, I don't think niches are good to a certain extent, but sort of you get all these people sometimes messaging you saying, and I get it sometimes, trying to say, oh, I'm the PT business or the best PT business person in the world, and try and sign you up to some rubbish. But at the end of the day, it's trying to say, oh, you've got a niche, you need to get a niche. In my industry, and I'm guessing with your industry as well, it's about being creative with the clientele that you get. Because for me, I work with on a Tuesday and a Saturday, I work with an 81-year-old lady who focuses on trying to prolong, obviously, the degeneration that everyone gets normally. So doing strength exercises in relation to the bits which she finds or wants to keep strong. And then I also, on the other end of the spectrum, I work with 13-year-olds and up to 18-year-olds at Cardiff City. So there is no niche there. You cannot tell me that there is a niche there, that it's impossible. And I love that point, because you can never ever get bored of doing so many things. But then at the same time, I think we can compare it with you with, like you said, I think we're having this discussion, I think just before Christmas, where it was something like you go and you have those like maybe portions which are typically smaller than most, which are full of flavor, of course, but then you have your other restaurants who get Michelin stars who just cook good classic foods, who actually do succeed just as much as the other one. It's that, unless there's obviously one person who's very obviously driven on eating one food, you can't do that, because everyone's, let's go down this pub on Saturday, and then, oh no, let's go for a really, really fancy dinner at this place. That there's no niche as a chef, I suppose. You always want to work in different places, I assume.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I think that's actually probably better than the headphones.
Technology. This is why I'm a chef and not an IT consultant. Anyway, we as human beings, we get bored of things really easily, whether it's food or training routine that you're doing 5 days a week. It's really very much about providing the variety which is going to allow you to be excited all the time about all the little bits. And I don't go out to eat at fine dining restaurants every day, and I'm a fine dining chef. I'd rather go out to eat at a really nice pub on a Sunday and have a really nice bit of roast beef, rather than going off and eating at a 2 Michelin star restaurant, because that's not what Sundays are about for me. That's just one example of how, as a human being, you need to just mix it up a bit. If not, you'd never be able to appreciate the other things that you're missing out on.
Yeah, it's exactly that's exactly the point we were talking about, wasn't it? So from that perspective, then moving back on to the very, very beginning of that story, and a couple of points there which I'm really interested in. Did you make the decision then to go to Le Cordon Bleu, or LC Blondon as I called it when I was a bit younger? Was there one point where you're like, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore, I want to go in and follow my dreams? Or was it sort of cascaded across the course of maybe like a year or a couple of years?
It was a nagging doubt in the back of my mind for so long. Did I want to be a linguist? It was something that I had to debate with myself, really. And as a kid, you don't really know which way is up at the best of times. But I did know that I had a passion throughout everything. And you look at it back now with hindsight and you say, well, it's really easy. But, that is the beauty of hindsight. Throughout the entire process, from when I was a kid making the walnut loaf on the back of the chair, through to the point I graduated from Le Cordon Bleu, the one consistent element there was my passion for food. It never changed. It never waned. It was never something that I said, oh, I'm not actually really keen on doing that. It was the only thing that I could always point my finger at and say, that is something that I love. it was never about how much money I was going to make from it. It was never about how many people were going to be impressed by what I was doing. It's back before the days of Instagram and Facebook. It was never about the likes that you were going to get. It was always about the passion for food and feeding people, and people saying, wow, that's the best XYZ that I've ever had. That's what pushed me to do it. So it's difficult when you've got a passion like that to ignore it. And that becomes even truer when you're starting to look at your career and you're starting to think about what you're going to do when you leave the, infamous world of being a student. You know that being a linguist, in my case, it's all fine and dandy, but you can't bear to do it for 30 years. And I think about being a chef, or I think about cooking in general. I might not have even placed my finger on being a chef, but just cooking, and I could hand on my heart say I would do it for the rest of my life, happily. That's what tipped the scales for me.
I think that is the epitome of what someone's passion is, I suppose, and whether someone sort of has the courage to do that or even finds their own sort of passion is obviously varied person to person. But were you, in hindsight now, after everything you've done thus far, with still plenty to go, of course, did you ever sort of think back and be like, I'm glad I did it this way rather than going straight to culinary school? Or was it a case of you being like, oh, yeah, I regret missing out, those 3 years, I regret it, because I'm 3 years behind? Or
it's not clear cut, it's not black and white. I mean, there are days, and I'd say there are more days than not, when I say to myself, I'm glad I did it, I'm glad I went to university, I'm glad I took that opportunity, because it's cemented in my mind that it's not what I wanted to do. And had I gone straight to culinary school, which was, again, bear in mind, it was never an option. I was never told, go off to culinary school by my careers advisors. I think mum told me once, but it was never, for her, just as for me, it was never really a serious thing, because university was just a dumb thing. And I'm glad I went to university, as I was saying, because it cemented in my mind that was not the career path, and I had to travel the road before knowing it wasn't the direction I wanted to head in.
You didn't want to live with regret, knowing in case you actually wanted to be a linguist, if that makes sense, I suppose.
Exactly. I am all for going out there and trying it all, and if you don't give it a shot, in 30 years' time, I might have been saying, what if I had been a linguist? Yeah. But I've done it. What if I had been a linguist? And it happens with everything. Yeah. What if I had done Chinese? I did Chinese. I hated it. Don't study Chinese. It is the hardest language in the world. All these things, you've got to give them a go, because if you don't, that avenue will always be a what if in your mind.
Yeah.
And it can be 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, however long you want to give it a go. Always try it out, because it's not about finding if you want to do it. It's more about making sure that you don't want to do
it. Yeah.
But again, at the time, being a chef was never on the table. Going to culinary school was never an option. So, I don't regret it, because it was the route that I had to take to get to where I am today.
That's fantastic. That is a fantastic story, because I think someone's story is either very, very linear or they're very undulating, where they'll sort of go to different avenues and do it that way, and then eventually find their passion later on in life, which is fine. That's absolutely fine, I think. But that is fantastic. I mean, the first half of this podcast is made up about someone's story, which at the end of your life, hopefully in a long time to come, you can sit back and be like, oh, my story's long, but each chapter of that story has made you into the chef that you will be in the future, which is brilliant. So after where you after you moved on from Adelina Yard up until the present day, or sort of what would be the present day about 8 months ago when you decided to do MasterChef, what was your thought, right? You know, I'm going to do it. You know, obviously I'm not going to get chosen, but you just did it anyway? Or was there like sort of an inkling feeling that you could maybe at that stage have gotten a place?
You know, maybe it's a bit boring of me to say, but it's exactly the same premise as what we were just discussing about going to university. In that, you know, my career has always been about pursuing an avenue, because what if I pursued it and it was what I wanted to do? It's the reason I went to Cordon Bleu. It's the reason that I went to Heston's. It's the reason I went to Bristol. And it's the reason I moved from Bristol back to London after a short period of time to open a restaurant with some colleagues from Le Cordon Bleu. Because, you know, it's a challenge, and I'm never one to say no to a challenge. Appearing on MasterChef, moving back to London, they were all moments where I said to myself, I could turn it down, but it's just an interesting next chapter in my career, which could be very short. One of these chapters in a book that's just sort of really fun, but very short and not very significant. Or it could be one of those big deciding chapters, you know, the reader is thinking about in 5 years' time, because it was so amazing and it was so integral to the construction of the book. And you never know what it's going to be. But if you don't do it, you know, that chapter's not going to be included in your book. And applying for MasterChef was a whim. I was in lockdown, and I had to blame or thank COVID for it, because we were in lockdown, and I was in lockdown with Matthew, our brother Matthew, because he wasn't feeling too great, and I was taking care of him. I said to Matt, should I apply to MasterChef? It's there, the application's open. Should I just do it? What if I do it? And he said, well, what if you do it and you don't get through? Have you lost anything? No. It's not like my reputation is going to be impacted because of it. And as all great thinkers do, they sit on the toilet. It took me about 5 minutes of thought, and I decided, you know what, sod this, I'm going to do it. And I did. Send them the application. It's a 30-second video explaining who I am. I'm never going to hear back from them.
Did you send the video on the toilet? Did you record the video on the toilet? Or was it?
I was in bed when I recorded the video. But fast forward 9 months, and we were sat on the sofa watching me on BBC One, and I hadn't said what if. I hadn't taken that jump. And that if I can impart any wisdom, I don't know if I'm wise, but if I can impart any wisdom onto anybody at the start of their career right now, don't ever do anything which you could in the future say, what if I had done it? You know, you don't want to have that regret. Even if it's just going to be a little chapter of your life where it's not really significant. You know, you gave it a go, it didn't work out, you gave up. Give it a try, because it could turn from a chapter into an entire novel.
Yeah. Well, you've just ruined my entire podcast, because actually at the end of each podcast I ask for everyone's advice, and you've just given it halfway through the podcast, which just ruined it all. How dare you?
I'm like a wishing well. I'm full of good advice.
Oh, steady on, mate. No, I'm joking. No, but in all seriousness, I think like what you said before, and I actually had a thought about it, as like each chapter adds up to the conclusion. So obviously the conclusion that you have is based upon all the other little chapters, no matter how big they may be. But, you know, and I think you obviously told me that you're going to apply. I was like, oh, fantastic. You know, there was never, I hope no one ever said to you, oh, really? What, MasterChef? Really? You? And it goes on back to what, everyone would have seen this, the podcast last a couple of weeks ago with TJ, where it was like, he said that he never wants anyone to say that, oh, really, you from Gibraltar, you should really, which is fantastic, because it adds up to there as well. And I never or had any other doubt when you said that you were going to do it, because at the end of the day, my thoughts and my feelings were never going to change whether you got in or got out. It didn't make me any prouder. It didn't make me any less proud, because I'm always going to be proud of you. You know what I mean? Cringy that is, but at the end of the day, like I said, regardless of it. So, and it may sound a bit weird saying I'm not more proud, but I can't be. It's I'm always going to be proud no matter what, which is fantastic. So, moving on from that straight on to some burning questions about MasterChef, or some burning conversation. And hopefully we can speak about it. If not, you don't have to say anything in case you've signed your life away. But sort of in regards to, it's not as if everyone seems, is it? Because obviously everyone probably thinks it's a bit like Love Island, where they record it, they release it, they record, release, is it?
No, it's not. It's quite interesting.
Well, actually, first, sorry to interrupt you. Let's speak about that application process first, and then we can speak about sort of afterwards when the show is released. I think that's a good idea, because then obviously we don't have to go back and forth. So speak about the application process, like, sort of, okay, obviously they've contacted you back, and sort of what was the next stage after they had contacted you back? Was it another interview?
I got a phone call, surprisingly within 48 hours. I got a phone call.
And they're on it.
No, they didn't say so much I was on it, but they said, we'd like you to speak to the producer. We'd like you to talk to the person in charge of casting, and potentially run us through your ideal menu, for example. And I had this really weird chat over the course of maybe an hour and a half with this woman, and she asked me everything, all the most obscure questions. Is it like, so if you were on a desert island, you could only take one dish with you, what would it be and why? Not the kind of thing you expect to answer, not the kind of question you expect to answer in what is essentially a job interview. She asked me loads of questions which were really probing into my character and who I was. And then we ended the phone call, and there was no real progression. Like, they didn't say, oh yeah, you did well, we're going to call you back, or you didn't do too well. It was just like,
all right, thank you, bye.
Goodbye. Exactly. And then 48 hours after that, I got another phone call, and we'd like you to speak to these people. Can you have a Zoom meeting with them? I was like, sure, yeah. They want to know more about you. Can you please plan a 3-course menu? And I was like, yeah, of course. So
you know what? Nah, I'm all right, thanks. Yeah, you're good.
And throughout the whole thing, nobody can tell you how you're doing or not, because apparently there's a lot of confidentiality involved. So they can't tell you if you've progressed. They can't tell you if you've failed, and you can't even mention the competition.
Well, that's what I was at. I was listening to a podcast on the Diary of a CEO, and it was I can't remember who it was with. It was someone who went to sort of I'm a Celebrity or whatever it was, and they say that when they actually get to the location, they actually take your phone away, so like you can't see any comments about who's like being released on it. So obviously I understand where you mean that sort of the confidentiality aspect, because they want to, no matter famous, non-famous, or sort of well-known, not well-known, they want to keep it a secret and keep the suspense. I suppose that's what makes the show at the end of the day, isn't it?
Exactly. And I had a lot of very bizarre conversations with people, psychologists, welfare officers, casting officers. They cover every topic, they tick every box. And the process is so in depth. So they make sure that they've got the right people for the job, and it's not all about food. It is about food, don't get me wrong, but it's so much more about
the cooking's a small bit at the end.
Oh yeah. It's a tiny little element. It's about
Just a
who
tad.
you are and are you good for television?
Yeah.
Um,
That's a very unusual thing to say when you're thinking about competition, isn't it? When you're saying, "Oh, are they good for television?" Right? Because I think we had this conversation just after the show had sort of aired and the outcome had come about, where I think I can't remember who said it, was saying how I was like, "Oh, that person went through because of that thing or that because of the other because they aired the show like this because it would work best for that TV." That is I think an unusual thing about sort of competitions like this, because at the end of the day, are you right for television over first, and then can you have are you good cook after that, which is a bit bizarre, but obviously it's the way it has to be, isn't it?
well, it's more than talking about whether you're good for television or not. It's or whether it's more about whether you can deal with what people are going to say about it.
Mm.
Thankfully, I didn't have any major disasters, bar a couple of dodgy bangers and mash.
That was bizarre, wasn't it? Oh my word.
But other than that, they're just trying to make sure that if something goes horribly wrong, that you're okay with the fact that people are going to talk online about you.
Yeah.
There's articles about me on the internet now, and you've got to be okay with that. And
well, you've developed a thick skin from me and Matthew taking the piss out of you and obviously you and Matt taking the piss out of me, and then me and you taking the piss out of Matt. So it's fairly easy.
I had plenty of practice. That's something I'll definitely say.
And dad and mum as well. At the end of the day, by the way.
It's all about
and partners and everyone, absolutely ruthless in the Fitzgerald household, ladies and gentlemen. By the way, nothing to cause domestic abuse about, of course, but
it's all a good job.
Of course.
And,
sorry, carry on. Sorry.
No, I think it's a good experience, because you learn a lot about yourself, especially under the pressure of a camera, and being able to talk to somebody who's asking you very probing questions about a very horrible experience you've just had in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And you can keep it together. That's kind of a good aspect of my competition as well.
What was the, and this is a hilarious story, because you've actually done this twice to me in the past, and I don't appreciate it very much, because what I think this was obviously, we'll talk about when you first got the call saying you're on the show, but you had actually rung me. So I was like, oh, I'm just, this is during like when COVID was obviously just coming out of lockdown, and I was heading back to the UK. And not only one time, so I landed, I think it was in Gatwick or Bristol, I can't remember where it was. And one of the times he actually called me to say that, he was, I can't remember which way around it was actually. I think it was, no, not actually. So it was that he had got through to the second, because obviously it hadn't released yet. The show was far from being released. Yeah. Telling me that he had got round to the second round. So I was like, and he told me this in the middle of security, the quietest place. I saw this place makes the library look loud. So I'm like, I'm on my phone. I'm like, yeah, come on. Yes. Yeah. And then he didn't learn from his mistake. And then he had told me that he was engaged in the exact same place. He probably was on the exact same tile on the floor.
I plan it out that way because I like to make people feel awkward.
Oh my word! I'm just like, I had to look around first, and I was like, "Why now? Why now? Are you serious?" So twice. But in terms of sort of the reaction, what was the first thing? I'm not going to say where he was, because that's a bit weird. But what was your overall reaction when you actually got told, you know what, Nico, this guy's pulled out? And I'm joking. What was your reaction when you got told that you had got on and you were going to be one of the participants on the show? Sum it up in 3 words as well. Sum up 3 words.
3 words. Exciting. Definitely exciting because of the.
It's more than 3 words. No, I'm joking.
Well, I'm expanding on each of the 3
right.
words.
Okay, right. Sorry.
It would be boring otherwise. I'm making this podcast here. No, it's exciting because there's
not wrong.
There's this big buzz about the competition. That's the first word. I'd always go for exciting first. Nerve-wracking, if I can use that as one word. Definitely because, again, 1.5 million people, I think, watch every episode of MasterChef.
That's a fair few, in it.
We come from a country with 30,000 people in it. You know, 1.5 million is jaw-dropping numbers, which I can't even fathom. You know, when I hear numbers like that, I think about somewhere like St James's Park or Wembley, where that's like just under 100,000.
There's a big difference between Wembley and St James's Park. All right,
Wembley needs to do a lot of work to catch up with the game.
Now with a budget you boys have, jeez. Oh.
Just so that the viewers know, I am an avid Newcastle United supporter.
And just to let you know, I'm definitely not. No, but obviously
I've got one word left.
Yes, you do have one word left, Nico. Yes, you do.
Proud. I would say I was proud because,
of course, I can back that for sure as well.
I come from Gibraltar. Gibraltar is, and TJ will have said this to you. You know, you often get dismissed because you're from Gibraltar. You're from this little place that nobody's heard of. All these big names normally grow up in London or Madrid or Barcelona. You know, where you have the facilities to cultivate people with these talents, and to be able to get to that point in a competition, to be able to get onto a competition like that and represent Gibraltar, it really gives me immense pride to be able to say I'm from Gibraltar and I'm on MasterChef the Professional.
Yeah. What so obviously you use the 3 words. You didn't tell me about the subheading about how many words you could use underneath that, so that's my fault. Sorry. I'll take that one on the chin. But sort of so that I can definitely vouch for that. You know, not being, you know, even if I wasn't related to you, like obviously I'm not related to TJ, and so I'm still proud that obviously he's from Gibraltar and he's now playing professional football, which is incredible, you know. But then fast forwarding it onto sort of all the episodes have been recorded, and then obviously we're coming up to the time when you released your post on Instagram saying you'll be on it. What obviously like we're about to mention sort of before I rudely interrupted your when you're about to say it. What's the process like? Because like I mentioned, it's not like Love Island, like I said, or one of these I'm a Celebrity shows where they sort of record, post, is it?
No, it's definitely not. It's all very much constructed around they know they've got an hour for the program, so you know, different segments are recorded, perhaps not even on the same day, and you could be doing an interview for 15 minutes, of which you're going to get 15 seconds of airtime out of it. You know? And we run through every different snippet, and there's photography involved and different, you know, you've got to do this walk along this area, and if you get through to this stage, you've got to come out of, you know, this door and you've got to cheer or whatever. And it's all meticulously planned out and really incredibly choreographed as well, in order to give it this seamless, sort of unrehearsed but natural feel to it. And it was all over my part at least was over by the end of April. So, you know, bearing in mind that it aired in November, it's all done so far in advance.
8 months, you said, wasn't it? In the end, it was sort of 8 months between but that was it. Obviously, it's obviously difficult not to tell anyone, but did you ever sort of, was it ever thought in your mind that, oh, what I've just said on camera here is not going to be aired, or this might be aired instead?
You know, I went in there with the mindset that I am in charge of what I say.
Yeah.
And I'm in charge of the message I get across. Nobody's out there to catch you out. It's not like a reality TV program where you've got to be careful what you say, because, you know, if you say something scandalous, it makes a great headline, so they're going to include it in the show.
Yeah.
if you don't like something you said, you just say, can I please do that again? And it's really, really quite easy to engineer a good interview or a good little segment or snippet. I'd say the one thing that obviously is a bit not something that I regret, but if you look in hindsight, the way you perform on the show in the actual cooking bit is very much about how you react at the time under the pressure, having been the first time you hear or see something. So it's all about the element of surprise, really, and you can't really figure out how you're going to react in that situation.
It's natural.
So,
I think the best TV though would be the most natural, the most natural sort of reaction. Because if someone's like, oh, dead still, being like, okay, it's not a bit boring, rather than so, oh wow, like the mystery box was the best one for me. Obviously, if you haven't seen the show yet, obviously I can't include it because of copyright and things like that. But sort of, the natural reaction, and then that made the next scene when, was it Marcus, I think his name is it then sort of said, oh, you look surprised, Nico. But then obviously you said surprised but excited, and it was obviously found probably one of my favorite bits of the show based on the creativity that came out from you, so, or in general. So from that sense, do you reckon that overall across the time you're on the show, did that sort of come out the way you wanted it to, or express the way you wanted it to?
Yeah, I think it did. As I said, I wish I had performed better under pressure, but that's just it's kind of the
nature of the beast, isn't it? It's the nature of being on a professional program like that.
Of the television beast as well, because it makes good viewing if somebody lifts up a mystery box and is absolutely shocked by what they find underneath. I'm happy with how I was portrayed, as it were, how I portrayed myself, and I don't have any regrets.
That's good.
In the long term, and I'm glad that I had the opportunity to participate.
That's fantastic. So with obviously the show coming out, which was brilliant, by the way, I'm going to also put some screenshots and even the description, all the links to all the interviews that Nico's done, both local to Gibraltar and obviously in the UK as well, along with the link to sort of the show program on the from the website, so you can watch it, because obviously don't want to say too much and spoil it for you. So but moving on from the show, what's next for you now, sort of after the show being released and sort of progressing?
So I'm at this really interesting point in my career now where I'm forging my own path and moving ahead with my vision of what I want to do with my food. And it's quite interesting for a chef because there's no real playbook about how you do this. As with a lot of vocational careers, you've got your own style, you've got your own ideas, you've got your own flavor combinations, and nobody can tell you how to do the food that you love cooking.
You versus you, isn't it?
Exactly. It's about fighting your own battle with yourself over whether you can produce food that's good enough to convince people to come and eat it.
Yeah.
Whether I do that in a restaurant of my own or whether I do that working as the head chef in someone else's restaurant is really down to what the market's like. The hospitality industry has taken an absolute battering over the past 2 years, as have many industries. And I don't want people to think I'm singling out the hospitality industry, but we've had it really tough in the past 2 years. And we were only just starting to recover. So is it a great time to open a restaurant? Perhaps not. But if there's one going out there that needs a young and
inspirational
chef, then I am their man.
That's fantastic. Of course. And obviously, hopefully, and I think that was the that's one thing you can look forward to, isn't it? After coming off the show, you can sort of be like, all right, cool. Now sort of, obviously, unlike sort of social media stars in a way where their life gets put on show every single day, I think obviously in the culinary industry, it's a bit different, because obviously if you're sticking in one restaurant, then anyone who goes in the restaurant will most likely only see you. So obviously going on the show gave you a bit of an opportunity to, it would be naive to think that you didn't do it for a little bit of exposure. No, I suppose it's
well, exposure is everything in an industry.
Yeah. You are your own brand, aren't you, at the end of the day?
Exactly. And if I discovered anything over the past few months with the added exposure that I received, it would be that it's very difficult to carve out a brand when you're sat at home and not in a professional environment.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm now looking at getting back into a professional environment and starting to chef again, as it were. And then maybe I can work on my brand from that environment. But there's so many people doing so many incredibly visual things on Instagram and TikTok and that kind of thing, that it's very often that other people with equally good content can be drowned out by the lack of pixels on their camera or whatever.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. So closing out then, obviously you've already said it previously at the beginning of the episode or halfway through, then and this doesn't have to be with chefs as well, what would be your sort of advice then for anyone sort of based around finding their true passion? Because I think you are definitely an advocate for doing that. What would sort of your one advice be? I'm not going to give you a word count this time. Okay, go ahead.
Unbridled advice, I guess. I said it before. Above all else, don't say no to an opportunity, but at the same time, be your own advocate. Go out there. If you love something, don't listen to what other people are telling you to do. Don't, by all means, take people's advice, and ask opinions, but don't feel that you can't go out there. And in my case, knock on kitchen doors and ask for jobs. If in the fitness industry, don't feel like you can't research your own training programs, you can't put in the hours and try and prove to people that you are good at what you do. At the end of the day, you've got to advocate for yourself. As a chef, I always say, above all else, go out there, knock on doors. If you need to offer to peel potatoes for somebody because you want to learn from them, do it, because you can't learn it from a book. If you're in a vocational industry like ours, you've got to learn by doing, and you've got to sell yourself by doing as well. I could sit behind the computer and write essay after essay about why I'm a good chef, but I need to go out there and feed people.
Yeah.
And likewise, if you're passionate about what you do, if you're a passionate chef, if you're a passionate fitness geek as you are, get out there, show people what you can do, experiment with what you're doing as well, and don't be afraid to get knocked down, because you will get knocked down. People will tell you that what you're doing is shit. People will tell you that what you're doing is wrong, that it's not worth it. Don't listen to them either. Don't stop because somebody says you're not good at what you're doing, or I do it differently. The amount of times I've been told that someone would do a dish differently to me is innumerable, but it doesn't mean that my dish is wrong. It means that their opinion is just different, and it makes us different as human beings.
That's
interesting.
That is spot on to exactly what happened to me the other day. Actually, I had a strength and conditioning exam in uni, and one of my good mates, Sean, I don't know if she's watching this obviously, but she was my participant or my athlete with me at the time, and I got, out of all things, I got asked to sort of coach was a front lunge, which was brilliant because obviously front lunge is nice and simple and it tests how you do things. managed to did everything, did the 15 minutes run through, and then he goes to me and she said, why did you progress? I said, I progressed it because her technical model was very good. And then he turned around and said to me, well, I would have regressed it because I saw something with that. And obviously this was rather frustrating because obviously it's a big difference between an exam and someone's opinion. But I understood, and one thing which I'll take away from it, regardless how well or how bad I did, is that obviously everyone's points of view are vital on things. And even if it's just a snippet thing about why they've said it or why they haven't said it, is what's going to make you a better chef, fitness person, S&C coach, sports scientist, or person. Because as soon as people narrow themselves off to experience or advice from someone who's done it before them, or done it to a better standard, or even done it for more years than them, is probably going to miss out on a lot of things.
I'd say as well, I'd add to that, not even just someone who's got more experience, just someone who's doing it because they
been there and done that.
The amount of times a young chef has come to me and said, there's this really great recipe, technique, dish, whatever, that they want to try. And I've said, well, go off and do it, and bring it to me to taste, because it could be the next big thing. Now, I'm not going to say, yeah, I'm going to put your dish on the menu, but I'm going to learn from you. And that is what the industry is about with chefs, with you guys, with S&C coaches. It's about learning from each other and taking experiences and something that you might have a lot of experience in, even though you've been in the industry for less time, but which you can teach someone else.
It's fantastic. I think that's a brilliant place to end, because then obviously everyone sort of understands, sort of no matter where you are or where you've been, everyone's still learning, which is brilliant. So thank you so much, Nico, for coming on. It's been absolutely brilliant. I think we've almost gone for an hour and 15 minutes, which is fantastic, and it's obviously not even felt for that long at all. So thank you so much for coming on.
Word counts.
What's that?
You've got to give me word counts, or I just go and go.
No, it's fine. That's the beauty of doing podcasts, Nico. Like you said, I'm terrible at writing or everything. So and I'm a brilliant speaker. So I ask some of the people I work with, I don't shut up. So that's my strength. So I do that. No, but thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolutely brilliant insight, and obviously leave all the links in the description. Nico, thank you so much.
Thank you,
ladies and gents. That was the episode with my oldest brother Nico. It was an absolutely brilliant episode, the longest episode we've ever done. So hopefully you managed to watch right to the end. Obviously, really appreciate if you did. If you did, please do hit the like button, the subscribe button, the post notifications button, because obviously this from a couple of weeks ago, I promised that we're just gonna carry on and we're gonna keep going, because I'm loving every single episode we've been doing recently. It's been fantastic to get insights into what people do on a daily basis. And that's what I want to stress with this episode, is because a lot of people are like, well, why have you had a chef on the podcast? Well, it's the same reason why I'll continue to have other guests on from all different types of backgrounds. People have had amazing stories, people who just live incredible lives. I think everyone who normally does podcasts is so quick to film episodes with people who have been incredibly successful or usually talented at things. Not saying obviously that people who have had on aren't, they obviously are, but I just want to stress the importance of just understanding that people who you don't even realize are actually living are incredible people in their own rights. So hopefully you learn from this podcast, and I just want to stress again, yes, it's called the Fitzness Academy Podcast, but it's not going to just be about fitness. Okay, so that's one thing you can look forward to. Okay, please see all the links in the description, team, and look forward to next Sunday. Take care.